Alright, today's video is going to be on making Batman gauntlets, and these are inspired by the artwork of Greg Capullo and his and Scott Snyder's run on the New 52 Batman. And these are made out of EVA foam, and what I used was 4 sheets of 5mm thick EVA foam and one 3mm sheet for this project. Today I'm going to be making some Batman gauntlets, and I'm going to go through the list of supplies first. You're going to need some plastic wrap and duct tape. That's going to be to make your template. Spray paint, clear coat, and Plastidip. I use Rust-Oleum. Mod Podge, some super glue, hot glue gun. Also going to use some contact cement, cutting board, and some cutting implements, scissors, X-Acto knives, razor blades, and something to draw with. Okay, so for the templates, I'm going to take some saran wrap, or you can use a Walmart grocery bag if you want. And this helps a lot if you have somebody to help you, which I don't. I'm going to wrap my arm in the saran wrap. Like that. And I'm going to take the duct tape. And I'm going to start wrapping it around the saran wrap. Be careful. I have two things here. One is not to put it too tight, because I don't want to cut off my circulation. That would be bad. And the other thing is to make sure I don't get it on my arm hair when I'm applying it. Next, I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut it off. Notice I am using round tip scissors, not pointed. And you want to be very careful with this. If you're a child, this is a step that you should have an adult help you with. And do not ever use an X-Acto knife to cut any sort of template or pattern off of yourself. Since this is going to open on the bottom, I'm going to carefully cut it right down the center. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's a little crooked, because this is just going to be a guideline for how big your gauntlet is going to be. So the reference I'm going to be using for this is Greg Capullo's artwork. This is the Court of Owls, and I just like the way that Greg Capullo draws things. So this is what I am basing the gauntlet on. So I took the pattern that I cut out and I laid it out. I traced it a little bit bigger around the edges, and I drew it to a point down here to match the way that it looks on the gauntlet itself. Next, I'm going to use some scissors. I'm going to go ahead and cut this out, and the foam size that I'm tracing this on is 5mm. I pick these up at Hobby Lobby usually. For this build, I'm going to use 5mm and 3mm. Also marked on the hot side here that this is the left. So I've taken the piece that I've cut out, which is for the left gauntlet, and I traced it, and I extended it here at the top because I want an overlap. I'm going to be wearing a glove underneath this, and the cuff of the glove that goes around my wrist is going to need to fit inside here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this out. And the reason for this being whenever you curl it over the undersurface, it is going to pull in. So I want to have a little leeway on each side. I'm going to go ahead and do that to both sides. So this will be the inner piece, and this is the outer piece. And then next I have a couple more pieces of the 5mm thick foam, VA foam, and I'm going to take the ones that I just cut out. I'm going to flip them upside down, trace them, and cut them out, and that will make the right. Okay, so I went ahead and flipped these over and traced them and cut them out for the right inner and the right outer. And next I took a couple pieces of paper, 8.5 by 11, and I folded them in half and cut it in half, and then I folded it again down the center. Set the inner pieces off to the side. I'm going to line this up as best as possible here in the center. And I'm going to trace this V here so I can make the outer raised detail part here on the center of the top of this gauntlet. And using some of the artwork as a reference, I'm going to take this piece here I traced on the left outer bottom, fold it in half, I'm going to draw the line up here, and while it's folded I'm going to cut it so both sides are symmetrical and even. Okay, so I went ahead and drew and cut the patterns for each side. And these are going to go there, like that, to be the raised definition on the outside of the gauntlet. And these two outer pieces that I just cut are going to be traced and cut out of some 3mm craft foam. Now that I've traced and cut these out of the 3mm EVA foam, I have all of the main pieces for the gauntlets. So next I'm going to take my right outer and the top right piece that I cut out of the 3mm foam, and I'm going to line it up here. I'm just going to use this as sort of a guide because I'm going to draw in some zigzags here on the sides, and I'm going to cut them out on both. I'm going to flip this one over on top of the left one and trace where I cut. Okay, I've gone ahead and drawn in some places rather sloppily where I'm going to cut out on here. And I'm using a small X-Acto knife to cut out all the little definition on the outer piece. Okay, so now that I've got both cut out here, the left and the right, I'm going to set those aside along with the center pieces. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start molding, heating and forming this to my left arm, and the opposite one I'm going to heat and form to my right arm. And these are the inner pieces. Okay, so I've gone through and heated and formed these to my arms. I got them pretty hot. They did shrink up somewhat. Now they have kind of a glossy shine to them. The same thing with the right, and both of them I trimmed here so they would meet up flush and even whenever I wear them. And next, I'm going to take the left outer and the right outer. I'm going to heat them as well, but I'm not going to get them quite as hot. I just want them to have a curvature. I'm not going to mold them to my forearm. Okay, so I got the outside pieces heated and got a slight curve to them. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to run some contact cement down the center of this here, of the inside piece, and then down on the inside of the left outer piece. And I'm going to attach them in the center and start slowly, meticulously gluing the rest of the sides around the gauntlet so that when you get done, you'll be able to see the definition. So I've gone ahead and applied the contact cement to the outside of the inner piece and the inside of the outer piece. Now I'm going to very carefully put this in here and glue them together because there's no margin for error. So after I let the contact cement set and dry, I took and slowly, working from the back to the front, glued the rest of it on, but I didn't use contact cement, I actually used super glue. Alright, so both of them are now glued, and I trimmed both of them up, including putting some notches in the side so that I could move my hand side to side more freely. And I trimmed a little bit of extra off here to compensate for other movement. And now the last piece I'm going to glue on is going to be the 3mm foam. That's going to go on the back here and down the center of the gauntlet. Alright, I've got all three pieces glued here now. So I'm going to move on to the next step, which is the spikes on the sides. I drew it on some paper, cut it out, and then traced that onto a scrap piece of 3mm foam. And that's what I use as the pattern. I drew 6 of them this way, and I drew 6 in the opposite direction. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to cut it out. And when I cut it on the back side here, I'm going to be holding it straight and even. But on this outside here, I'm going to cut it with a 45-degree slant. When I get to this bottom piece, this is going to be cut straight. Alright, so I've cut out all the pieces, and I've begun gluing them together, and this is why I put it at a 45-degree angle on the outside edge and flat on the back side. And any imperfections or blemishes I'm going to sand out. Alright, now that I have all my pieces glued together, I figured out what I want in the front, middle, and the rear. I'm going to go ahead with some 320 grit sandpaper, and I'm going to sand all these flush. Now I've begun tearing little strips of duct tape, and I take them and fold them over on themselves. And I got 6 of these, and I'm going to use them to temporarily attach this to the side of the gauntlet so that I can take a ballpoint pen and trace my outline around it, because I'm going to cut into the gauntlet itself, and that's the reason why I cut these flat here on the end. It's going to slide directly inside of it where it's going to be glued in place. Okay, I went ahead and glued, or no, sorry, not glued, stuck them all on with the duct tape, and then used a ballpoint pen to trace around here. I did this on both. I started with the right and then moved on to the left. And next, just going to pull these back off. remove the tape. And then I'm going to go through with a straight edge. I happen to be using a aluminum ruler. And I'm going to check to make sure they all line up as good as possible. Okay, now that I've taken the ruler and straightened all these out, I'm going to next take the box cutter and I'm going to begin to cut these out. Alright, I've gone ahead and cut all the slots in it and inserted them, and what I'm going to do next is pop them back out, put some super glue around this inside edge here, and pop them back in. Alright, I went ahead and super glued them all in and let them dry while I went back to work. And now I'm going to take my glue gun and I'm going to start sealing all these edges here, right along here, and I'm also going to put some beads right around the edge here to help hold these in place and give it a little more stability. Go ahead and sealed up the ends and inside the gauntlets with hot glue, and I went through and heated everything to seal up the foam so it doesn't absorb all of my sealant. And I also heated and molded this out a little bit. And initially I was going to use Plastidip, but I've changed my mind. I'm going to use just Mod Podge and give it a nice texture so it kind of looks like metal. And then I also have flat protective enamel, Rust-Oleum, that I'm going to spray on it after that. I already went through and did the first coat of the Mod Podge and absorbed into the foam pretty good and sealed it off pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and do a second coat now, but just on certain areas. And the two areas I'm going to touch on are going to be the centerpiece and the little fins here on the side. And the reason for that is I want it to have some texture on this and on these. I'm going to do this way to give it some nice texture to stand out from the rest of the piece. And just brush it on kind of thick, and this stuff dries real fast. So as it's drying and starting to get tacky, I continue with the brush strokes. And what this will do is help in the texturing effect and look of it. And you can do this as many times as you want. Just figure out which direction you want to go. And then just apply it. See, it's already starting to get tacky. Seal off the end here. Alright, and there you can see the direction of the brush strokes is how the texture is going to look. Okay, it's almost dry, and here you can see the difference between the texturing that I did on these couple pieces here and the smoothness of the rest of the gauntlet. Alright, they're all ready to be painted, and I'm going to use some Rust-Oleum flat protective enamel. And instead of spraying one side and trying to flip it over after a day or so and spray the other side, I took a Walmart bag and poked my thumb and hand through, and then put a rubber glove over that and just used it to cover my arm. That way I can hold it like this and just rotate it and turn it as I spray it, do the whole piece at once. I wedged a broom handle in between some stuff, and I'm just going to hang it on that whenever it's done. Okay, it's been 48 hours since I've spray painted it, and you can see here what's dry to the textured area versus the non-textured area. And back to these other textured areas in the gauntlets. That's just to help that stand out a little bit. against the rest of it and give it some contrast. And the final thing I do before I go ahead and attach the Velcro here is I'm going to take some matte black acrylic craft paint, and I'm going to do the edges here where they're still a little bit red, and I'm going to paint in between. And it's flat black, and the spray paint's flat black. However, it is a slightly different tone when the light hits it. So I'm hoping by painting in these crevices here and the ends of the blades, the edges here where it's tapered in the backside, will add an extra little layer of contrast. Alright, I finished all the painting of any places where the spray paint didn't quite get, and I put 4 Velcro tabs here and a strip along the inside. And that's pretty much it. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching.